Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Utopia podcast. This week, two blog stories came out on the Inside EA Sports blog relating to NCAA Football. The first blog of the week, the big one, was our first look at Dynasty Mode in NCAA Football 10. We'll go through the video, we'll kind of break down what Russ Canary talked about, one of the producers on the game. He walked us through some of the new additions, and there are also some additions in there that he didn't talk about, but we were able to see just by looking at the video and looking at the menu screens. First off, the interface. Tommy, what did you think of this new interface that we saw?
It's very nice. It's rather slick. It seems to even move a lot. Transitions between menu item to menu item a lot smoother than what we saw in the past.
Also, in the menu screen, the very observant and very astute members of the NCAA football community noticed two items that we have heard nothing about before. First being something called Team Builder, and the other is something called Road to Glory. Right now, we don't have any information on these two features that we can share. There's a lot of speculation. We also saw a season showdown. There was a brief blurb on the first press release for the game that talked about that, but we don't have any major or concrete details. In the video, Russ goes through some of the additions and changes made to Dynasty Mode, and one of them, and Tommy, I'll let you explain this one, computer sim stats.
Yeah, basically what this is if anybody who plays Dynasty, if you go and look at the stats at the end of the season, you'll see that all of the stats are really, they're just way too overblown. Guys will be throwing, 40 touchdowns in a season, but only throwing 2 interceptions, and many guys completing 70% more passes or whatever. And looking at just the video that Russ showed us, they definitely look a lot better. Some people have pointed out that they're still a little bit knocked off, but they are much better. You don't have 20 guys with 70% completion rating. Instead, you may have 5 or whatever. So it in comparison to this past season, it seems like it's much more accurate.
That was one of the things that Russ, when he first came to ncaaStrategies.com, talking with the community, he asked thoughts that people had about the computer sim stats throughout the course of a season. Were there some stats that were way too high, some stats that were too low, some that were just way out of balance? And I think he took a lot of that feedback, and I think a lot of it he knew ahead of time, but I think he also took a lot from the community and went in and made the necessary changes. One of probably the most welcome additions and announcements in this video was the fact that the players leaving bug in Online Dynasty has been addressed and fixed. That was one that I know everyone who played in Online Dynasty ran into that, and they absolutely hated it. And that's probably one of the most asked questions on the forums throughout this past year was, how do I get this to happen? How do I get them to stay? What can I do? Is there going to be a patch for this? It was something that they were not able to address in a patch, but thank goodness it has been addressed for NCAA Football 10. Russ also talked about that the promises within Dynasty Mode have been fixed. Tommy, can you talk about this?
I'm not sure exactly what triggers it, but it seems as though, and I think it might just be playing time, but it also might have to do with if you promise 3 different promises in the same season. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. But anyways, if you make promises at the end of the season to a player, at the end of the very next season, they will invariably leave for no reason. Even if you promised them playing time and they played every single snap of the game, they will still leave. These will be definitely welcome because you'll have that guy that's been a starter for you all season, and for some reason out of nowhere he decides he wants to go to one of your competitive schools or something. So looking forward to getting that fixed.
Russ also talked about how this year in recruiting they were going to hold some recruits, high-profile recruits, into the off-season recruiting, and this is something that's been kind of a hot topic the past couple days on the forums. Tommy, what are your thoughts on them doing this, holding some of the recruits over to the off-season recruiting period?
Well, Russ kind of actually talked with you and I about this, their plans for this, and we kind of got some insight into it. And basically, as I understand it, it's kind of those guys that nobody's even thought of or nobody's even heard of, and then all of a sudden, their senior year of high school, they have a breakout year. I like it personally because, number one, if in an online dynasty, everybody's going after the same 4 or 5 star guys, and everybody's trying to sign those same guys. Well, obviously, now they'll have to decide, do I sign these 4 or 5 star guys, or do I wait and maybe see if there's a guy that'll better fit my scheme in the offseason? I mean, it'll add a new, I guess, kind of a strategy for you, especially in an online dynasty.
I like it as well. I can understand where people, when they first hear about it, think, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why would there be so many players like this? But I don't think it's going to be a huge amount of 4 and 5 star players. There will be some, yes, but it's mainly to, like Russ told us, to kind of show off maybe players who flew under the radar, discovered late, that it'll put a new emphasis on off-season recruiting.
Yeah, and Russ actually even mentions in the video that he says specifically like 2 5-star players will be in the off-season or something like that. So, I mean, it's not like we should expect to see 20 5-star players all of a sudden appear. As well, he did mention to us that it's not like we'll have all of the same pool of players and then add on these guys at the end of the year. It's not like we'll have a whole lot more 5-stars than we're used to getting. It'll be the same number of players. It's just simply a portion are that held to the end of the year.
Also in the video, we saw our first look at the new kind of the recruiting screen. And in this year, we were able to see the results of each pitch, how much it increased the interest meter. Tell me real quickly, what did you think of this new look to the recruiting screen that we saw?
Well, the recruiting screen, it looks different. I mean, it's the same basic information we've always gotten, but it looks pretty different. But as far as the showing the results of each pitch, that's big time to me, because I always, I'll make a pitch and then I never know how effective that actually was until the next week, and I see if it improved or not. But then you have those guys that you're not on their top 10 list, and you'll still be pitching them, and you never know how well you're improving from week to week.
And the final edition, kind of showcased in this video, was something new in recruiting, now called competitive recruiting. And this is where each week, you can do this for each player one time with one school. You kind of recruit against one of the teams that is in their top 10 list. And I'll let you explain how that works a little bit.
Basically, can do it once for each player against one school per week. Basically, let's say you've got a poor rating in school prestige or something like that, but another team that's going after the same player you are has a high rating. Well, you can basically downplay that pitch so that the player no longer considers that an important pitch. It'll really help, especially for online dynasties, so that if you and another guy are going after the same guy, you can basically talk bad about that his TV rating isn't very good, and whereas yours is. So it'll be nice, especially for teams that are still trying to build up, that they can kind of make players understand that what they're actually concerned with is not nearly as important as they think.
In our second blog this week, this is from Ian Cummings, lead designer of Madden NFL 10. This is a feature that will be in both titles, Madden 10 and NCAA Football 10, and is adaptive AI. This is something that we were able to see in NCAA Football at the community event in late March, but we're going to go through the blog here and tell you what Ian talks about. Tommy, I'll let you break it down. You do a great job with the features. Talk about adaptive AI.
Basically, how this works is the computer will start recognizing your patterns. So like if you call a dive play over and over and over again, then the computer will start picking up on that and basically kind of key their players around that particular play. It'll key their players, as Ian mentioned, they'll get a small ratings boost, but then as well they'll start calling plays, defensive plays that'll try to stop that particular play. Like if you call a screen play, then they'll start calling more flat zones and things like that.
It really stresses that if a play keeps getting run over and over, that the defense will adjust, and also that depending on what difficulty level you are playing on, that'll adjust how quickly the CPU kind of picks up and makes those adjustments. In the blog, there's a image of the adaptive AI tool, and it kind of shows the repeat counts. On rookie, you can pretty much do what you want, and the defense isn't going to really adjust. On pro, if you run that same play very often, repeatedly, they're going to pick up on it. And then all pro and all Madden, amount of slack that you have is decreased considerably.
Yeah, it looks like they're really giving us the options, not giving us the options, rather they're controlling all the options as far as that, as it should be. On easier difficulty levels, you'll have an easier time against the computer.
This is something that I know a lot of the NCAA football community wanted. They wanted some kind of adaptive AI, and what I like is that on the lower difficulty levels, it's not going to be a huge factor, because the default difficulty level, at least on NCAA Football 10, is varsity. But however, in a recent poll that we've had at ncaaStrategies.com, the vast majority of users play on All-American and Heisman. And that is something that I'm really intrigued to see what happens in the final version of the game. I know at the community event, one of the things I had mentioned to Russ was, a lot of our guys play on All-American, a lot of them play on Heisman. Don't be afraid to ratchet that up. Don't be afraid to make it tough, because our guys want a challenge. There are a lot of guys who, as it related to 2009, put on Heisman and then had to make a lot of slider changes, make house rules to get any sort of challenge. That if this adaptive AI works even half as well as we hope and half as well as it sounds, that I think is really going to add another level of challenge to the game this year. And with that wraps up this edition of the Utopia podcast. But before we call it a day, Tommy, how many days away are we from the release of NCAA Football 10?
We are now 93 days, just right around 3 months worth of time that will pass kind of almost starting to get into the heart of I think where EA will start giving us more and more information. We got the cover and athlete coming out soon. We got the draft. There's usually information coming out around the draft, so lots to look forward.
I agree. I think these next 2 weeks, I think we're going to have a lot of news, so I think people should get ready. If they've been dying for information, I think the well is going to open up very, very soon. For Tommy, this is Chris. Everyone, thanks for listening to this edition of the Utopia podcast.